this could have been the weekend where they start the journey back. And it's going to be tough to have this journey back when you've dug this hole and now you go up against a bunch of playoff teams in a row to dig out of it. And look, I thought they played okay this weekend.
Oh, they did. They played okay.
They played okay.
Didn't play badly. They couldn't hit on Sunday, but Kershaw is going to get you every now and then. He's pretty good.
It's not bad.
It's not like individually, these games they lost. I don't think you could look at any of them and go, oh, the Cardinals are crap. They played terribly, and I'm so fed up with this team. Like, in a vacuum, I don't think that's your reaction from the weekend series. Friday, I think they kind of let one slip away. Probably should have found a way to win that game with the offense that they were able to get. Saturday, you do win. Palante pitched excellently, continuing to show his chops for his rotation spot. He's got a stranglehold on that thing and should be very much in consideration for joining and remaining in the rotation in 2025. But then Sunday, I mean, sometimes you do get beat by a Hall of Fame pitcher, Andy. That does happen. The problem is we've had some conversations like this about Cardinals games throughout the year. Games they've played well but haven't been able to secure for one reason or another. We've also, though, had a number of games that the Cardinals have not played well and they've lost as a result. All three of the Reds games, that statement would apply to those games. So they have built the hole. They've dug themselves the hole, as you said. And now you can't really afford to say, well, you got beat by a Hall of Famer. Like, you're really going to be mad about that? You can't afford to say, well, you hit 3 home runs off the lefty starter on Friday. You're really going to be mad about that loss? You have to. You
need wins now. You need the wins.
They have to be wins. That weekend series against the Dodgers has to be a 2 out of 3 at worst because they played pretty well. Frankly, they played pretty well. And they pretty good. It's not enough if you're not winning the games at this point in the calendar. Not because of strictly this weekend and what that was and how that looked on paper and how it looked in real life, but because of everything that came before it. You don't have the luxury of playing a pretty good series against the Dodgers and not winning it. And yet that's the result from over the weekend. The Cardinals lose 2 of 3. I said they'd sweep the series. Andy, they played well enough to win that series and maybe even sweep it. Just in a couple of areas, you lose some close games, and the result is they're further down in the muck. They're not closer than they were when the weekend began to trying to make a run of this. They're further away, and they're like a little dot now in the periphery of the playoff chase. They're not really even there anymore. It's kind of the way it's starting to feel.
Fangraphs has their percent chance to make the playoffs right now at 4.2%.
Teeny tiny little dot. That's the little. That's the Cardinals.
Small. I mean, is it fair now to talk about, okay, maybe not a playoff team? Is it fair to discuss, will they have a winning season?
Oh, no. I'm not going to spend an ounce of time discussing that because who cares? Make the playoffs or don't. Yeah. I get your point because they're not even above 500.
I get it. It's not to say that they would make decisions based off of whether or not they're a winning team.
But from the outside, we could talk about it because the Cardinals haven't had consecutive losing seasons, not counting strike-shortened seasons, since like 1959. It's been, it's been a long time. And I don't think they were playing 162 games then. I believe that was 154 games, was it not? I think that was what it was. You're probably right. You're probably right. At first, I looked this up the other week, and I was like, it's been since like 1980-81. But then somebody reminded me, no, there was actually a strike involved in that as well. So you have to go even back further. Double checking here. Yeah, they only played 103 games. No, that's not right. Where did I come up with that number? I don't know. I mean, it doesn't matter.
It's been a long time.
The point is, I was wrong, and that happens all the time. It was 1958 and 59, and you are correct, Andy. 154 game seasons back then. So never has happened in the era of 162 game seasons. Yep, hasn't happened in a long time.
The Cardinals are in danger of having that happen the first time in a while. And so that's what's at stake also when you talk about this year's season. But, I mean, again, this year had to be market improvement even above just that from what happened last year, from 91 losses to playoffs. That was the expectation because I think that from what the Cardinals added this offseason, from how the organization carries itself of setting a higher standard, things like that, that's the expectation. And I think we can almost clearly say that they're going to fall short of what we expected this year.
Oh, I won't bury him yet, but I think it looks very unlikely. I mean, it looks very. You do in Miles Michaelis on Friday night, kind of joked, kind of meant it when he was asked about the urgency that this group might need to be able to get where it wants to go and where it's said it believes it can go, because there aren't as many games on the calendar left as there used to be, right? And so he kind of said, well, I would rather it not, and it was referenced, right? 2021, y'all did go 17 in a row, and his response started with, well, rather it not take 17 in a row to get back into it, because I don't know how often that happens. I guess not that often.
No,
well,
not.
It doesn't happen that often, and it's getting to the point where without it, the Cardinals aren't going to get where they want to go. And I think they've used up their 17-game win streak for this century. It's already 3 years ago they used that up. They got to scratch off that lotto ticket, and that one's gone. So, yeah, I mean, the problem of it is the schedule remains tough. It started out being tough this weekend. Dodgers are a really good team. You even kind of lucked out a little bit with the matchups because Tyler Glasnow was scratched on Saturday, which helped you. He went on the IL during the game Friday. Helped to be able to get Saturday's game. They might have got Saturday's game anyway. I don't know. Glasnow's a tough customer, but Palante pitched really, really well and should be highlighted for his performance from over the weekend. But without Glasnow, do you even win a game without that IL stint? So the fact that they play pretty well, they got a fortunate bit of a break on Saturday with the opposing starter, which, by the way, I guess that's not even fair to say because Bobby Miller ended up pitching. In the second or third game of the season, Bobby Miller struck out I think the number was 1 million Cardinals, if you recall that game. I think it was the Friday night Apple TV game, first series of the season. And the Cardinals just were completely useless against him. So they made strides, faced Bobby Miller again. They were able to get to him, get 4 runs against him in that game. So there were positives that you could take from this weekend. But when you're where you are as the St. Louis Cardinals right now, you can't sit there and look at this in a vacuum sense. You have to look at the all-encompassing picture, and it's an ugly one that to make it look a little more pretty, they had to win multiple games this weekend. And now that they didn't, you're not only are you still in the same spot you were in, you're a little bit worse off because you won 1, you lost 2. And the Brewers are coming into town tomorrow. It doesn't even matter who it is at this point. I think they're 11 back of the Brewers at this point. I've stopped looking. I mean, the division is not even a...
You're right, they are 11 back.
It's 11, Andy. I mean, that's done. That is done.
Brewers are the champs. Everyone else is. Cardinals are technically second in the division right now. They're closest to the Brewers. It's theirs.
Finally, the NL Central is what we always kind of thought it was, right? Yeah. Mediocre, right. Except for and credit to the Brewers all year long. Even going back to last year, we were they're not very good, but they are very good.
Yeah,
they're not. I'm still going to count them out in the playoffs, but they have a very good regular season team.
Yeah,
their bullpen is great. They've got, even without Christian Yelich, it has not mattered. Without Corbin Burns, it has not mattered. The Brewers are the organization that the Cardinals used to be and wish they were, right? Is that fair? Small to mid-market team that is doing more with less, doesn't have to have the highest payroll in the league. I mean, Milwaukee Brewers are looking like the model franchise of the NL Central lately, and the Cardinals are looking like they are very strongly straining to avoid a potential reality in which they are the new basement dwellers that are going to have to go through a rebuild. I don't think it'll ever happen to the extent that some of the real bad rebuilds have been across baseball at points in the last decade and a half. But what are the Cardinals, not just this year, it's looking bleak for this year. What are they hanging their hats on going into 2025? Right, because they made the substantial changes to the roster this offseason.
Yeah.
They're going to have to do it again and hope that they can strike it rich.
I mean, Mason Wynn, I guess, is one thing, but...
100%. Yeah.
Mason
There's
Wynn.
Some names.
I mean, sure, you like some of the names that have contributed this year, but you don't like the full units. I mean, what full unit do you like going into 2025? I mean, even the bullpen, you like the back end, but...
It's hard to predict.
How do you get to Ryan Helsley? That's the big thing that the Cardinals have had to try and figure out this year, and that includes getting the starting pitching to a consistent level themselves. It's all connected.
Well, that's going to be probably the biggest question as to what do they do, because last offseason the starting pitching was a huge thing, and they quickly addressed it with Gibson, Lynn, and then Sonny Gray. But Gray's going to be back. Gibson and Lynn are on options. You could bring them back. You could cast them aside. I mean,
you do both, or are you only choosing one of those guys?
I thought for a while you choose one, and the leader in the clubhouse for me has been Gibby.
Yeah,
but he gave up some homers against Cincinnati last week to where that's the freshest thing in our mind about him. But largely, Kyle Gibson has been what the Cardinals hoped he would be. But you're capping your upside, is what a lot of people said about the signings coming into this season, because you're like, Gibson's going to be fine, but not great. Lynn's going to be fine, but not great. You've made sure to stabilize the floor of the rotation with those two signings, but you've capped your upside because instead it's opportunity cost. There's not a younger option that's going to ascend that you can put into the rotation or you can sign or trade for, because that's where you've put your eggs. That's the basket. It's the basket of safe, but not really that exciting in terms of the upside. Well, what about the way the season has gone tells you, the Cardinals should go right back into that again next year. It's not a slight on either Lynn or Gibson specifically, but it's just the way the unit as a whole feels. And Miles Mikolas is under contract for next year. I think the bold thing would be to just say, you know what, might have to eat some money there, because Miles Mikolas has been the least competitive of your five starters all season.
I mean, least bang for your buck, that's for sure, right?
Well, least bang for your buck, but least production. He's an ERA of 5.5 at this point. And look, Friday was the one time where I kind of tease occasionally about the soft contact when it comes to Miles Mikolas and how, it's the soft contact that got him, the one that they hit over the fence, sure. But in this game, that last inning, he gave up two soft singles, and then Ollie said, look, he's at 100 pitches, that's where we got to pull him. And then Kittredge comes in, gives up a hit and a homer to a guy with a 540 OPS. Kevin Kiermaier was a 3-run shot, made Miles Mikolas' solid game suddenly turn on a dime like that. But those numbers still count, and Miles Mikolas' ERA is pushing 5.5 at this point. If you're looking at how to fix the rotation for next year, you can't say, well, bring back Gray, Mikolas, Gibson, and Lynn, and then, let's keep Palante. That's the same rotation.
Yeah.
And it's the same rotation that's like 25th in ERA right now for starters across Major League Baseball this season. I'm not like looking at any of the guys in particular and saying it's your fault, but kind of might be Miles Mikolas' fault in terms of the way the numbers go. But he's the one that you figure, because he signed, is going to be just penciled in for next year. And if the Cardinals are desperate to undo 2 years of mediocre or worse, they probably have to eat that in the same way they might have to be eating Steven Matz's money. And I just don't know that they're going to be willing to do both of those things in an offseason where we've already heard the rumblings. They're not looking to add payroll. So to think that 2025 is going to be a lot better if we're circling starting rotation as something that needs to be given a facelift, and we go, might be the same five, maybe minus a Lynn or a Gibson, and you plug in a Steven Matz back in, or you plug in a guy from AAA or AA. Really like Quinn Matthews. That's probably the best thing that happened this weekend. Andy, did you see his start for Springfield?
What was it? He's 7 innings.
He's 11 strikeouts or 10 or 11 strikeouts.
Gosh.
He's been unbelievable. Might even see Memphis before the end of the year. But that's like,
man.
You're hanging your hat on 2025. Maybe Quinn Matthews can just accelerate. I think he's their best pitching prospect, even over Tin Kent's at this point, strictly because of durability. He threw 156 pitches in that game at Stanford last year. They drafted him in the 4th round. They say, okay, take the rest of the year off. No big league, no professional games for you. And then this year he's gone low A, high A, now to double A. He's dominating double A. I'm not saying you pencil him in for the rotation in April, but he's going to be somebody that maybe by 2025 at some point can exist in our world. And Tink Hence maybe can exist in our world, although innings are going to be an issue for him. Andy, other than that, there's not a lot of brightness around the corner, the immediate corner anyway.
Again, you're going to have to make tough decisions. I don't know how much flexibility the Cardinals will have to even make those tough decisions going forward.
They won't.
If they can't add payroll. At that point, why even get rid of Mozeliak? Because Mo's just going to be the guy that, is going to... No, I know. I don't want to tell people that, but you might have to be prepared for that if that's how the ownership is going to trade it.
Here's honestly the way I view that. I think almost regardless of what happens over the next 6 weeks, Mozeliak is going to step aside at the end of the season. They could make a run into the playoffs, and I still believe that he will, of his own volition, he will not be fired, but he will move into an advisory role. That's my prediction.
Okay.
Because I don't just get the sense that, here's the thing. We can, look at all of these little moves and who should be called up and who should be sent down and who should be moved here. We can look at this and live it every day. It's almost as though John Mozeliak is in a spot where he doesn't have to GM or Pobo for his job. His job's not going anywhere. He's not going to be fired. So I think he, though, sees the writing on the wall of it's getting a little stale. For 2 years in a row, we haven't been able to get there. It's probably time for somebody else to take a turn. And the person that is employed as an advisor in this organization, Chaim Bloom, could take a turn. And when you talk about payroll restrictions, he made his name in Tampa and then went to Boston, where they told him, try to do the Tampa thing by trading Mookie Betts away. And then they turned on him and said, you didn't do the Tampa thing good enough. We didn't win enough. But it's like, you got to know it comes with the territory. You're slashing payroll. What are you talking about? But if Bill DeWitt says, no, I mean, those Boston years, they were in the mix at least. I think they made an ALCS even. Yeah, okay, come do that here. That's the reason. If you're really looking payroll, this guy might be the blueprint for how you can do more with less. And is that going to mean World Series around the corner for the Cardinals? Maybe not, but it could mean a bunch of 83, 84 win seasons that maybe you sneak into a wild card every other year. And fan base won't like that. But if Bill DeWitt is looking at this TV contract and looking at the gate and seeing not as many fans coming through, that might have to be the 1 to 2 year scale back where they say we can be semi-competitive still, but we're going to have to do more with less. And maybe Chaim Bloom, if they do decide to make a move with Mo at the end of the season, or if he chooses it himself, that could be the way that it goes, and it actually fits the payroll concept as well. Like, the timing could actually be kind of fortuitous. But we know Mo's under contract for 1 more year, so he would, again, he's not getting fired. I don't think Bill DeWitt's going to fire John Mozeliak. But Mo might have to look around and go, all right, it's probably time to let somebody else have a crack at this.
875-KTGR to call or text us with your thoughts on the Cardinals after losing the series to the Dodgers this weekend. Paul is here on the KTGR hotline. Paul, what you got?
Hey, Brenden, I was curious. I was really, the Cardinals lost the game, but right after the game, they had this thing on that Dylan Carlson had his first walk-off hit ever. So the Cardinals hyped him as his best minor league outfielder they ever had. He never had a walk-off hit. And they keep saying that Jordan Walker hit 370 in AAA this year. I think he's got 1 hit since he came up. They hype these people, and they're a little more than average. And it's torturous to the fans. If you expect their starting pitching, all of them are over 34 years old. Fetty, I think, is 32. They won't sign anybody.
You did forget about Fetty, didn't you?
I did the whole rotation, Paul, and I didn't mention Fetty. Thank you for the reminder.
Thank you. It's a little bit younger.
It's just been a rough season. And another thing that sets me off, too, Ollie always, Michaelis gives up 5 runs, and he said he pitched great. He's like an agent to the players. Well, if they got all the players they want to win the division and everything, and the players aren't the problem, who's the problem? The manager, or what is the deal?
I don't know, Paul, but I appreciate the call here on the Big Show.
Oh, I really appreciate the passion. That's as fired up as we've heard Paul in a while with his Cardinals questions. Look, I think you could look at the problem is a pretty pointed term, but like John Mozeliak built this thing, and at some point you look at it and go, the boat keeps kind of sinking down, and we keep trying to tape it back up, but we're kind of running out of Flex Seal tape right now. We're on our last roll. I think we might just need to start to build a new boat, and somebody else might have to be the one to build it, right? So, to the question of who's the problem, at the end of the day, you might look at the field level and see things Ollie Marmol does that you don't like. I still say John Mozeliak has crafted with his own hands this ship, and so at some point you have to maybe look at that direction. As for Michaelis Friday, like I did mention, Andy, that was the one game where I will say going into that 6th inning, Miles Michaelis was pitching well. He gave it up a little bit at the beginning and then had a 10 of 12 or something retired, was really not even in any trouble at all. Mookie Betts homers to start the 6th. Mookie Betts will do that to people. So it's even then not the end of the world. He had 2 outs and was in an 0-2 count of getting out of the 6th inning with like a 4-3 lead, I think it would have been at the time. And then he gives up a little bleeder of a single and then an infield hit that was a 5-hopper to Mason Wynn where it was hit so slowly he couldn't do anything with it. And at 100 pitches, Ollie Marmol took him out. And then Kittredge goes base hit, 3-run homer to Kevin Kiermaier, who's got a 540 OPS. Now, those earned runs got Miles up to 5 because he had given up 3, 2 bleeder singles, but then he wasn't allowed to finish it out, right? But he was at 100 pitches. So most of the time this year, I think that's been a cop-out. Friday, when Ollie said that Miles pitched well, I think that's what he meant. He kind of pitched fine, but Andy, are we not far beyond the moment where we can say, hey, guy pitched okay, like, don't blame him.
Yeah.
You got to win. You just have to win the games. It is not fair, but it doesn't have to be fair.
That's
it's
the
baseball,
standard now. Like you've been playing fine for 120-ish games now. It's time to play great. If you want to be a playoff team, that's it.
Play great and get great results. You can't always control that, but that's the position that the Cardinals have placed themselves into, is that they are going to be, they're going to be sometimes going to succumb to a result that's not fair, but you can't look at each game in a vacuum anymore. You just have to say, well, did you win? Because if you didn't, then I can probably tell you where you're going in October.
Yeah.
And it's not the postseason.
It's insert golf course name here. 875 KTGR.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that. No.
I think there's a lot of Cardinals fans who might say otherwise.
I prefer that.